Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 212, written by Boiled Egg. Darkness complete. 1 Mississippi. Normal. One morning or afternoon in the summer of 1999, my brother and I were home from school, hanging out in our living room playing cards on the rug. I remember this so clearly, and I've never been able to come up with a reasonable explanation. Everything simply went dark. Not like the lights going out, but a complete loss of vision. I couldn't see my hands in front of my face or hear the traffic outside. This lasted for maybe a second, if that. I could probably have just counted 1 Mississippi, and then everything was back. My brother and I looked at each other, and a moment later, our mom walked in and said, "What was that?" The three of us were feeling shaken and tried to write it off as a cloud passing over the sun to make us feel better, but couldn't explain the sudden loss of sound. I know I've read a few accounts from others over the years of something very similar happening, but I've never been able to come up with a satisfactory explanation. Case file number 213, written by Meadows May 1130. A striking birthmark switched sides. My daughter called me, frantic, about a week and a half ago. She said, "Mom, what side was my birthmark on?" I was half asleep, but I thought about changing her diaper as a baby. It was on my right, so it would be her left. So I said, "It's on your left thigh." She starts freaking out even more and tells me, "That's what I thought. I knew I wasn't crazy." She had woken up that morning, and as she was getting dressed, she noticed the birthmark was on her right thigh. Now, this isn't some small birthmark that you could not see for months. If you ball up your fist and place it on the side of your thigh, that's how much area it took up. The birthmark is also raised, so even if she hadn't looked down for weeks, she would still feel it every time she touched her leg. It's also a very dark shade of brown, so it's not like it's hard to see, it's very noticeable. We both are now freaking out, going through old pictures and photo albums. Strangely, we can't find any of the pictures where her birthmark is visible. This means half of her pictures from her being a baby to a toddler, 3 or 4, are missing all of a sudden. That's several photo albums. Her first birthday, her first time in a pool, all missing. So what the hell is going on? Case notes, file number 213. So reading along, I'm thinking, oh wow, another universal crossover event. But then I corrected my brain. That can't be, because it's your daughter calling you, telling you the birthmark switched positions on her body. If you had crossed over, it would be normal for her birthmark to be different on her body. She'd never have told you, and you'd never have known unless you saw her swimming or something. And she didn't cross over, because the body is carried... Hang on, actually, I'm basically processing out loud here. When one crosses over, presumably the physical body does not move along with them. So, if your daughter is from another universe now, just her consciousness, one of the main differences between her realities for her could be where her birthmark is on her body. Strange though that the pictures are gone. It may well be something else, but on that, I wouldn't know what. Case file number 214, written by Pushcartvanny. Overnight, a pile of clothes got drenched, inexplicably. I don't even know if this is the proper sub for this, but as the title says, I woke up this morning to a pile of laundry in my room being completely drenched, as if I pulled it from the washer and just threw it on the floor. Let me be clear, I didn't wash the clothes. I've been pretty lazy lately, so the clothes have been sitting in that exact spot for about a week. I have no animals, no leaks from the ceiling or floor. The floor is completely dry underneath the pile, and it's pretty much just the top of the pile that's soaked. It has no smell. There is nothing in there that was able to be spilled. I know it seems like something really small, but I'm truly at a loss as to how this happened. It's as if they just got wet from nothing. As shameful as I am to admit it, I was actually going to wear a pair of the shorts that were in the pile, but they were soaked. Otherwise, I'd have never known. Yes, I checked all the pockets of my pants and shorts. Any insight into how water can just appear from thin air enough to completely drench a pile of clothes without getting the floor wet at all? Edit. I've moved the clothes. I've replaced them with a couple of towels to see if it's a leak. I've also bought a carbon monoxide detector, but it takes a couple hours to register if the ppm is really low. There is a 0% chance that I peed or dumped water on my clothes. No chance. I would 100% know if it was urine based on my water intake/diet, but admittedly, it is hilarious to think about. Edit 2. So I've tested for carbon monoxide. It's been about 2 hours, maybe 3 hours since I plugged the detector in, and so far, nothing. 50 ppm can take up to 8 hours to trigger the detector, but so far it's looking like the CO poisoning theory is becoming less and less likely. Edit 3. For those of you unable to understand this, I will reiterate. I did not pee on my clothes. The liquid had no odor and no color whatsoever. Urine may not always have a color, but it always has a smell. Edit 4. Okay, it's been like 9 hours since I plugged in the CO detector, and we're all good here. I laid some towels down in the same spot where my clothes were yesterday, and they were dry today, so a localized leak is pretty unlikely as well. Here's where it gets weirder. There is a huge puddle of water that I stepped in this morning on the way to the laundry room. Not near the washer or dryer or water lines at all, just inside the doorway going from the kitchen to the laundry room, so the furthest point in the room from the appliances/water lines. If you're enjoying the video, consider leaving a like. Now on to the next story. Bonus file written by The Whale 13. The Graveyard Island. There are voices. In the 14th century, the plague had arrived here and with a vengeance sought out to kill everyone in sight. A few managed to escape to a decently large island in one of our biggest lakes in my country. But the plague wiped them all out, one after the other. In the end, the whole island turned into basically a large cemetery, or so I've heard. Another thing that is important to the story is that an author lived here in the 50s before moving to another one. The house and adjoining sheds still stand. If you have the patience to listen through this, I can promise you that you will be just as horrified as I was. I love the outdoors, and after coming across this island on Wikipedia, I just needed to go. And then the opportunity arose. My family and I found a road close by and followed a small path to a little peninsula. The island measured at the very least a half a mile long, and it was truly a sight to behold. It might not seem big, but when heavily forested and covered by cliffs and large hills, it's larger than you might think when on foot there. Well, I swam over there. Took about 5 minutes, and that was around 100 to 200 yards. The water was not warm, but perfectly cool enough to shield me from the blistering heat. Not too challenging, and I was in a very good mood to say the least. Immediately, I didn't find a path, and that's why I just walked until I found one. After coming across a little shelter, I continued to walk, and I was taken away by its enchanting beauty. Crisp blue water, which almost looked like a lagoon, 100-foot-high cliffs on a small island in northern Europe. The truth was, it seemed so incredibly amazing, just too good to be true. My journey continued, and I went on. After finding the lagoon-looking thing and being both bewildered and amazed, I continued, and I still regret that so very much. The thing that I recall was that after I passed a little meadow, my mind immediately thought, this will take a dark turn. And maybe I just kind of made myself think that it was different, but it just feels like this cozy and wonderful atmosphere changed, and it all just seemed different after that. Well, you know how I mentioned the author's house? Yep. Abandoned since the 50s. I saw it, but before I could reach those forgotten and sad-looking old buildings, I needed to cross some ferns. They didn't look odd or anything like that. It was just a path between some patches of waist-high ferns. For every other step I took, I heard movement from the ferns. I stopped, looked around, and found nothing. Figured it was a rabbit or something. Took some more steps. The movement and snap of twigs got closer and closer. It was following me. Trying to shut out my increasing feeling of unease, I went up to see this old house. Coming closer, I saw how crappy it looked. The main house and the surrounding sheds looked beautiful, but long forgotten and neglected. The lake looking at me from behind the house was a bit of a relief. Then I heard voices. People were talking from inside or behind the house. Now I was seriously horrified and got a feeling of dread I had never felt before. I just wanted to jump into the lake and take an extra long route back so I wouldn't have to be there anymore. But whatever it was that talked, I never ever want to meet, ever. So I did the only thing I could do. I ran, past the ferns, still hearing it follow me. But after some very uncomfortable pacing, I finally crossed over the meadow and I felt better. In the end, I managed to swim back, but not until I came to the shore from where I arrived, I had a feeling that someone or something was following me. I still don't know what it was there on the island. It was so very beautiful, but I don't think I ever want to go back there.